Hi, I'm Charlotte Kostelik,
Hey, I'm Heather Greitman.
and we're the co-authors of the book Sensory Processing Explained. Today, we wanted to talk to you guys about something that I know sensory parents experience from time to time, or more often, which is the public scrutiny and judgment that can sometimes come along with that.
Yep.
So before we really get started here, I wanted to ask Heather if she could share a bit about sensory processing challenges and how they affect kids. And basically, what I'm asking Heather is this sensory thing real?
Yeah, so the short answer to that is yes, sensory is real. The tricky part comes into trying to discover if what your child is reacting to is a sensory thing or if it's a behavior or a combination of both of those things, which it can be all of that. So that's where it gets a little confusing for parents and teachers and professionals also, just trying to figure that out. As far as what a child is experiencing during a sensory meltdown, you may or may not know that there are 8 main sensory systems. You've probably heard of the 5 that we were all taught in school, but there's actually 3 more that we're still learning about and just kind of figuring out how they affect kids. And that is proprioception, vestibular, and interoception. So interoception is the senses from inside the body. So hunger, thirst, needing to use the restroom, your heart rate, your breathing rate, all of those things play into interoception. Vestibular is your sense of balance, which is located in your inner ear. And then proprioception is the input through your muscles and joints. So all of these combined, your child could be not experiencing things the way we do. They're getting too much of those inputs, and so it's sending them into like a sensory overload situation where their bodies just don't know how to process and handle this information appropriately. And so they go into almost like a fight, flight, or freeze response in the body, where their body's like, okay, this is coming in. I don't know what to do with it. Do I need to run from it? Is it going to harm me? Or they freeze because their body just doesn't know what to do, or they try to fight it. And so that's where it kind of goes into these sensory meltdowns where the child is just trying to either deal with this input, or they're obviously not dealing with it in the appropriate way in the brain. And so it goes into these overload and meltdown situations.
Yeah, so as you can hear, sensory is a real thing.
Yeah.
As much as sometimes it's not looked at that way.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the challenges that parents face is the misinformation or lack of understanding about sensory that exists. I think that a lot of people now kind of see sensory as the latest buzz phrase,
Yes.
or buzzword. And
Mm-hmm.
they think that parents are just making excuses for their kids' behavior, and just using sensory as a way to excuse that. So that's a challenge that parents definitely face. Heather and I have just come out with a course called Overcoming Sensory Meltdowns, and we shared about the course on Facebook, and we got a comment, and we have had several positive comments too, but I just wanted to actually read this comment to you because I think that some of you will be able to relate to getting these types of comments. Yep. From strangers, family members, friends, even sometimes teachers. So I'm just going to read this for you, but again, this is not how we feel. This is a comment that we got on Facebook. So it says, most of them need their butt. They didn't actually use the word butt, but I'm changing it to butt. So most of them need their butt spanked. I truly believe it's a learned thing because they have learned that if they throw their fit long enough, they'll get their way. And it's exactly that kind of attitude that parents are up against. You can't single-handedly teach every person out there about sensory and about why your child's behavior may be related to sensory, or why this meltdown may have resulted from sensory overload or some other type of sensory response. But what you can do is you can learn as much as you possibly can about sensory and how it's affecting your child. Yep. And about as your child specifically and their unique sensory needs and how sensory affects them. And in learning those things yourself, one of the things that's going to do is obviously, give you some skills to be able to help your child have less meltdowns, which is, fantastic. But another thing that it's going to do is, if you're in a situation where your child has a sensory meltdown in public and you're getting those snide comments from strangers or the glares or the judgy looks, then it's going to enable you to know that this is a neurological response, to understand that your child is not choosing this, to understand that your child is not out to get you. They are not trying to embarrass you, and that this is not something they can control. If you can understand that and really, really accept it, then I'm not saying it's going to be easy to ignore the comments and the glares, but it's going to make it easier not to take them to heart. If you really believe these things. So I'm just going to ask Heather to speak for a moment about how a sensory meltdown can be a neurological response and not a choice. It's not the same thing as like a fit or a tantrum. So yeah.
Right, definitely. And I know this is something we talk about specifically in the course too, is the difference between a tantrum and a meltdown. Because a tantrum is similar to how that Facebook comment was worded, not necessarily the first part about the spanking, but about how the child is doing something, a learned response to get a reaction and to get something. I think most of us think of the child that's in the grocery store and asks, "Hey, I want that candy," and you say no, and then they throw a huge fit, kicking and screaming on the floor. And I think the main difference when you're looking at a sensory meltdown is the children that experience these meltdowns, first off, it's not fun for them. They're not thinking, when they wake up that morning, oh, I'm going to have a meltdown today, or I want to, do this, have this response. It's not something that they're looking to do. In fact, we got an email from somebody who was an older teenager, I believe. I think she was in her older teens or late 20s, and she experiences this sensory overload and meltdowns. And she said to her, it physically hurts her when she has these responses. And so children who are experiencing these, it's not fun. They don't want to do it, but their bodies just can't cope with the input that they're getting. And it truly is a neurological response. The wiring in their brain is just not connecting right. They're not processing the input correctly. And so their brain just can't deal with that. And so when they feel this, they do the only thing that they know how to do. And so part of us as professionals and educators and parents is learning some responses that we can help share with children. Hey, when you feel this way, let's work on some ways that we can react that first off won't hurt you and will also help them feel better, because children don't want to feel this way, obviously, but their bodies are just not letting them, or they don't know the appropriate responses to that input. And so I think that's our role as parents and educators and professionals, to be able to share with them how they can cope and how they can react better in different situations.
Thank you. Yes. I believe all of those things because I've seen it firsthand with my kids, and it's made such a huge difference in their lives, which is why I'm pretty passionate about sharing that with other people. So yeah, Heather and I just wanted to come on today and just give you one tip for handling the public scrutiny and judgment. And if you would like more tips for that, and tips for tons of other things related to sensory meltdowns, like preventing them and sensory overload, the defiant, really big, even dangerous, violent behaviors. We go through all of that in our sensory meltdown course. So we will pop a link in this video so that you can go and check that out. And if you have any questions, be sure to let us know in the comments, and we would be happy to help you. So thanks for watching.
Thanks. Bye.